My revenge for cheating made life better. She was sitting with her back to me at one of the dimly lit back tables. It was a small Italian cafe we had frequented on special occasions in the years before we had children. Her shoulders were bare and her hair was loose, which was unusual for her. But I had no doubt it was Allison, my wife. With her was Larry Palmer, her boss. The conference ended a day ahead of schedule. John Hendricks, the CEO, got all the orders he needed and was very happy. So happy that he gave all the attendees a huge bonus and a long 4-day weekend. As it was only a 4-hour drive from Brighton to Suffolk, and it was still only morning, I decided I would drive home. The 4-day vacation didn't mean much to me since I'm self-employed. I'm doing this job for my longtime best friend John, but the bonus was good for me. Traffic was heavy and I made it to my hometown around 2:30 without any problems. We live in a small village on the coast, about 15 miles from Ipswich. Since I had to drive through Ipswich to get home, I thought it would be a good idea to make a reservation for this Sunday. This would hopefully be a pleasant surprise for my wife. The place was full of new faces. I almost expected to see Luigi's smiling face greeting me, since he was the old owner of the place. But I realized that things were just going along. After all, it had been almost 25 years since we'd last been here to celebrate with Allison's parents the news of the birth of our firstborn. The girl at the front desk was clarifying the details of my reservation when, quite by accident, I heard laughter. My wife has a distinctive laugh. I'd recognize it anywhere, and that's when I saw her. I saw her with her boss, Larry. Larry and I had a long association. He was my nemesis in high school, the school bully, and he took my first true love away from me. Katie Ryland. She was supposed to go to the disco with me at the end of the semester. We had been dating for about a month when he decided he wanted to take her away. His father was a big banker and came from an old family. His family was incredibly wealthy. Katie broke my heart when she went to a party with him. He offered Kathy the whole world, and she accepted. They actually married, but after numerous infidelities, she divorced him about 10 years ago. A wide smile shone on his face, and he sat across from Allison. I discerned that their hands were on the table, touching, just fingertips, but touching nonetheless. He was laughing, and her back was to me. Sir, the young lady was saying something to me, but I couldn't make out what she was saying. Sir, can I get a table from 2 to 4 in the afternoon or 3 to 5, whichever suits you better? I came to my senses a little and said, Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, please, let's go from 3 to 5. My wife was wearing that white floral summer dress I bought her in the spring. It looked great on her. The thin shoulder straps emphasized her perfect neck and arms. I liked her in that dress. Why were they here and why were they touching each other with their hands? Until it actually happens to you, you think you're just going to walk up and kick his ass. Throw it out in the street and curse everyone you see. But the opposite happened. I recoiled and sat down in the chair next to the receptionist's desk. It seemed like I was back in 1993 and it was Kathy again. I literally had no idea how to deal with this. What surprised me was that I was hardly angry. I just felt overwhelmed. I felt as if my guts had been ripped out of my body and all I had to do was sit quietly. The young woman handed me a glass of water and asked if I was okay, to which I nodded silently. I just needed to leave and I rushed to the door. 15 minutes later, I pulled closer so I could see the entrance to the restaurant. I waited patiently, going over in my mind all the ways I could kill him. It was almost 5 when they came out. It was a hot sunny day, and she looked amazing in that dress and strappy heels, the sun shining through the skirt making it look like she was almost naked. Legs were always her best feature, and she showed them off at every opportunity. Larry came out a few seconds after her and put his arm around her waist. There could be no mistake. They were a couple. She rested her head against his chest as they walked to his car, and I felt sick to my stomach. I'd always been a person who took things personally and wasn't afraid of a fight or a scandal. But this shook me, and I just sat there with my fingers clenched on the steering wheel. He opened the door for her, and as she climbed in, He ran his hand down her leg and got under her dress, then squeezed her ass. And there was that laugh again. I ducked down and they drove off, leaving me alone with my thoughts. It was almost 20 minutes later when I finally drove, my eyes full of tears and my head splitting with pain. I drove a few miles before I realized I was close to home, and pulling up to the bungalow we had made our own, our safe place to raise a family. There were only 10 houses on our street. It was a quiet road. 7 of the houses were bungalows, and it was almost like a senior housing complex. Big green, perfectly manicured lawns where everyone knew each other. Larry Palmer's Jaguar was parked in the driveway not far from my house, but far enough away that it looked innocent. The driveway was quiet. It was 8 o'clock at night. The lawns were immaculately manicured, all in bloom. Everything looked as it should on any perfect suburban street. I drove by and parked near the Oldman Browns at the far end of the cul-de-sac. I had absolutely no idea how to handle it. In the back of my mind, I knew that if something like this happened, I would kill this guy and probably hurt her too before kicking her out. The reality was that I was confused and hurt. This man was doing this to me again. In my mind, the worst was happening. He was having sex with her in my bed. My head hurt. My stomach twisted into a knot, and I felt extremely nauseous, like I could vomit at any moment. I leaned back in my chair and cried. Why did she do that? I thought we were happy. It took another half an hour before I decided to talk to them straight. I texted her twice to ask if she was okay, and that I would see her the next day when I got home, but I didn't get a response. My anger began to build. She was obviously too busy to deal with her husband's message. The 2-minute walk from my car to the driveway seemed like an eternity. My fists were clenched and I was shaking. He was much bigger than me, but adrenaline was surging through my veins, and if I caught him off guard and knocked him to the floor, I'd bust his head open. His car stood still, my house looked quiet, the road was quiet, but all hell was ready to break loose. I walked down my gravel driveway and the rocks crunched under my feet. I remember hoping they wouldn't hear it. I grabbed my key and went to the front door, but at the last minute I decided to go in the back way. The side gate never locks. It just locks with a latch and is used whenever I clean out the trash cans or mow the lawn. I felt silly tiptoeing around my own house, trying to act as inconspicuous as possible, avoiding windows and ducking at the right moment. There are French doors in the living room that overlook the garden behind the house. We had installed them 2 years ago, and I crept to the edge of the frame. Looking in, I saw a coat and purse on the dining table and a bunch of keys and a phone next to it. Moving a little closer, I saw a naked ass sitting on the edge of the table, his ass. He was standing with his back to me. I turned around in horror and pressed myself against the brick wall, shocked to the core by what I saw. It was strange, the shock of seeing her having sex with him. A feeling of nausea came over me again, and I started breathing fast. Standing outside those doors, I felt weak, small, and the anger was replaced by sadness and despair. I looked inside again. There was a small gap between the curtain and the window opening, and I used my phone to take a few pictures for clarity. I quickly typed a text and sent it to her to see what she would do. The phone on the table next to them lit up. I watched as he picked it up, quickly read a few words, and handed it to her with a smile on his face. "Husband," he smirked. Allison looked at it, never taking her eyes off him for a second, and put it back on the table. Something inside me shivered, and I stood in full view of everyone in the doorway. Grabbing my phone, I called her. This time her phone lit up. I saw her hand come away from his body and reach for the phone. She still didn't see me as she was about to speak to me. My fists clenched into fists, and I was ready to break the glass when I heard her voice. "Hey, Steve, are you okay?" I couldn't speak, she repeated. "Are you okay?" "Yes," I said quietly. My fists unclenched. Her soft voice did something to me, and the anger raging inside stopped, leaving pure sadness and emptiness in its place. I stepped aside and told her I was fine. I'd be back tomorrow. "Okay, baby. I'll see you tomorrow." The phone disconnected and I sank to the floor and sobbed so hard my body shook. What was wrong with me? I was the kind of guy who was ready to blow my head off my shoulders, and here I am crying like a baby. That wasn't me. That wasn't like me at all. I quietly got out and walked back to my car. I didn't know how I was going to get them yet, but I would. Until something like this actually happens to you, you can't honestly say how you would react. But what I can honestly say is that it never occurred to me that I would react like this. I booked a room for the night at a cheap motel across town. I got wasted at the bar and tried to pick a fight with anyone who got in my way. I got off with cuts and bruises, but I felt better afterward. I was so drunk I thought it would be a great idea to send her pictures at 2 a.m. A minute later, my phone lit up. I found great comfort in the fact that I had ruined their evening by assuming it was still there. I didn't answer, but that didn't stop her trying, and then came message after message. I smiled and thought to myself, yeah, now you can make time for texting. In a moment of sheer madness, I opened the pictures and sent them to the kids. I regretted it as soon as I hit send and tried to return them. I was so devastated I didn't know how to do it. I turned my phone off and leaned back on my pillows thinking, screw them all. The next morning, I had a terrible headache. My mouth tasted like a local cat had pooped in there overnight, and I desperately needed a painkiller. I grabbed my clothes and, avoiding the fuel trucks, headed for the garage store that was attached to the motel. After drinking some paracetamol and 2 cups of coffee, I opened my phone. Ping, ping. A slew of texts and missed calls came in, and I was struck by the realization of what I'd done. Most of the messages were from Kelly and David. With a heavy heart and a fit of dread, I opened the first one. It was from my daughter, Kelly. "Dad, what a stranger!" I wrapped my arms around my head. What had I done? What was wrong with me? What made me send pictures of their mother sleeping with her boss? In what reality would that be a good idea? In total, I had over 20 text messages and almost as many missed calls. The phone rang just as I was about to head for the shower, and it was her, the cheater. "What?" I was pissed. "Steve, get off!" I yelled, turned off the sound on the phone, and continued to shower. 10 minutes later, I returned to the phone and saw 2 missed calls and 5 text messages. I almost deleted them without even reading them until curiosity got the better of me. The first one said she was sorry and that it was a mistake, blah, blah, blah. The next few begged me to call her please. The last one had her asking where I was. None of them asked the question, "How am I? Am I okay? Please come home." I took a week's vacation and just drank and slept. It killed me, but I turned my phone off for 3 days, not wanting to talk to anyone. Near the end of the week, I turned it back on, and it was flooded with messages. Most from the cheating girl, but a few from the kids and my parents. I felt sorry for my mom and dad. My mom idolized Allison. They were like best friends, and this could kill her. I went back to the kids and arranged to meet after the weekend at the local garden center, figuring that if it was in a public place, there would be less chance of a scandal. Kelly is a hot mess, and she could cause a scandal in a room full of nuns, so I hoped it would calm everyone down a bit. It wasn't so easy with my mom. She burst into tears as soon as she realized I was calling. They were beyond worried. I told her I was sorry and that I wasn't thinking. I just needed time to realize what had happened. The kids told their grandparents that we had had a fight and I hadn't been home for a few days. I left it at that. They didn't need to know the full background of the affair yet. I saw David first and beckoned him over to the table I was sitting at, and when he sat down, I texted Kelly. I ordered 3 vanilla lattes and some cream cakes. There was fire in Kelly's eyes, and it was obvious she was close to an explosion of rage. "Mom's worried about you, Dad," David said softly, leaning toward me, and then, unusually for him, he reached across the table and took my hand in his. It broke me, and I burst into tears. Kelly suddenly joined me, and her anger was gone. and she came over and hugged me, nuzzling into my neck. "You," she sobbed. "Why did you send us those disgusting pictures?" I couldn't speak. Every time I opened my mouth to speak, my breath caught, and I sobbed even harder. Finally, after a few minutes, she asked again. "Why, Daddy?" "I got mad, Kel. I'm really, really sorry." "Mommy's really worried, Daddy. Won't you talk to her?" "How can I?" "You saw what she did, and in our own house, didn't you?" "Please, Dad," David said in a softer voice than his sister's. "Come back with us. Please talk to Mom." "No, the cheating girl can burn." Both recoiled in horror. They had never heard me say that before, and it was addressed to their mother. When I saw the look on their faces, I immediately regretted it and apologized. I also took the opportunity to sincerely apologize for sending the pictures. No matter how drunk I was, I had no excuse for doing that to them. It took another week of incessant begging before I agreed to meet at our house, a house I have so many fond memories with. I agreed, saying that our children had to be present. She didn't like it, but reluctantly agreed. When I saw Allison, I was shocked. She had lost weight. It had only been a couple weeks, but she looked pale and haggard. Her eyes were sunken and dark as if she hadn't slept in 2 whole weeks. It didn't seem right, but it made me feel somewhat better. She looked very frail, not like my Allison. When I walked in, she ran up to me and wrapped her arms around my neck. I pushed her away. She fell to the floor and sobbed. David looked at me angrily as he helped her to her feet and took her into the living room. He told me that she hadn't slept or eaten properly since it happened and was now on medication. He said it like it was my fault. Kelly was already sitting at the table. She glared angrily at her mother as David helped her sit down. She had a kettle of tea and was pouring it into 4 cups. I stood there shaking my head thinking, as if tea could solve all problems. I knew I should take a seat at the table, the same table this asshole was sitting at, the same table she was having sex with him at. I just wanted to turn around and leave. "Dad, how can we survive this?" Kelly asked. "Mom swears it was just a one-time thing and will never happen again." I looked at my wife. Allison was sitting at the far end of the table with her arms around her head, quiet and alone, while I sat at this end with the kids. "I'm so sorry, kids. I don't understand how." I wheezed and shook my head. Allison howled and hit her head on the tabletop, causing both kids to jump up, and again David rushed to her aid. Kelly just stared at her mother. I was surprised. I thought my ally would be David, not Kelly. Kelly held out her hand for me to shake gratefully. She shook it lovingly and said, "What Mom did was disgusting, we all know that. Even she knows it. She was seized by the moment and will do anything to make it right." "I'm not sure she'll be able to, Kel," I said sadly. "Anything?" Allison said quietly from the far end of the table. I looked at her with utter contempt, and I think she realized at that moment that it was over. 2 weeks later, after John's advice and help, I started divorce proceedings. The kids really didn't like it, but they understood me, and we divorced amicably, and divided things up so we could both have a chance to start over. By mutual agreement, I took out an insurance policy to buy a small apartment, and Allison took out a small mortgage to pay me the balance we had agreed on. She refused to part with the house and all the memories she once had in it. David still sees her once or twice a week, but I know that Kelly blames her for destroying the happy family home and hardly ever sees her. After the incident, she never saw her boss again and soon quit her job. I put in a good word for her because she is the mother of my children after all, and now she works for my friend John. As for me, I live in a small fishing village in the west of Scotland. I sold the apartment a year later for a pretty good profit. I have taken care to integrate into village life. Most have accepted me as one of their own and do what they can to help. I met a charming woman. Her name is Megan, and she is a widow. I have helped her fix her leaky roof and done other repairs to her house. I help out in any way I can in the community. I buy drinks at the local pub she works at and socialize with all the regulars. I do various part-time jobs for free, which helps. I changed careers, and here I am working for one of the big oil companies. My salary has doubled, and my life is great. And of course, my revenge has made life better. They say revenge doesn't work, but I can assure you it does. 4 weeks ago, Larry Palmer was attacked at his mansion in Essex. He was brutally beaten to a pulp. The attacker was dressed head to toe in black, wearing gloves and a balaclava. Several items were stolen to make it look like a robbery. Palmer suffered fractures to all but one of his fingers. The one that wasn't broken was cut off with garden shears. He also had a broken left hip. Both knees were badly smashed with a hammer, and he lost 2 toes from the same scissors. His testicles were hit the hardest. He had to have them amputated. The plastic surgery on his face would last at least 10 years. His good looks were a thing of the past. He begged me, I mean the man in black, for mercy. He apologized so many times I lost count. Also, he first confirmed my wife's story that it was the only time. Then, when he lost his first testicle, he admitted that it had been going on for 6 months. I was busy calling bingo players at the local village pub at the time of this horrific crime, and I have nearly 20 witnesses who will confirm this. My friend John helped with transportation from a small independent airfield here to an airfield in Essex, and I was home within 2 hours of the crime. I made sure our local police had a record of me going into the station to report the hit and run on my car just before heading south. Larry Palmer knows who the man in black was, I'm sure. Whether he can prove it, I doubt it. Unfortunately, the divorce was finalized a couple years before I learned the truth. But one day, she will get hers. Right now, she lives in fear that one day the man in black might pay her a visit too. I would never leave my children motherless, but she doesn't know that for sure. I haven't spoken a word to her in the last 2 years. All news about her comes from my parents, who keep telling me that she's sorry for everything that happened. They see her from time to time at family gatherings, which I try to avoid. The kids show up from time to time, and I love seeing them. David gave me my first granddaughter. Her name is Sarah, and she is beautiful. Kelly gets along great with Megan, even though Megan realizes that she will never replace her mother. And I know this is a very stupid thing to do that will probably torment me for years to come, but I made a short video. I say short, it's 15 minutes of agonizing screams and indescribable agony of a middle-aged man being beaten almost to death. I watch it from time to time when I'm a little sad, but it lifts my spirits. Is it worth it? Yes, every second of those 15 minutes I enjoy. The end! Subscribe to my channel. Thank you.